That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of...
Massie didn't dance around it. He demanded clarity about the names victims reported to the FBI, and Patel couldn't explain why none of them were investigated.
He's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Giuffre, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information, and we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of 2 different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in lifetime.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names. That is not what we do. We are also not in the habit of releasing incredible information. That's not what we do. But multiple authorities have looked at the entirety of what we have.
Okay, I got to move on here. Were you present when the AG had the White House event when she released the binders to the social media influencers?
I was, yes.
So if you're willing to meet with social media influencers who stood to benefit from the sensational and sad stories of these victims, will you meet with the victims as well?
The FBI will meet with anyone who has new information.
Will you personally meet with them?
The FBI and the professionals who are handling the cases will.
Were you instructed that it was important to release the documents to the Oversight Committee on the day of my introduction of the discharge petition to release these files?
I don't know what day that was, so no.
Well, they were released that day, and there were victims' names who weren't redacted because they were in such a rush, and the victims are not happy about that. Have you investigated any of the CIA connections? Have you seen the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein? And if you wanted to see it, would they show it to you?
Well, I can speak for the FBI, and that's presuming there's a CIA case file. And I've reviewed everything that the interagency, not I, the FBI, that was provided to us.
Would you be willing to look at the CIA file on Jeffrey Epstein?
If there is such a file, and if it has not already been turned over to the FBI will look at any new investigative leads.
Have you made any progress on the pipe bomb investigation January 6th? And have you made any progress on the motive of the Las Vegas shooter?
As to the first, it's an ongoing investigation, and we have made progress. As to the second, sir, I'll have to get back to you.
This exchange goes far beyond a typical oversight hearing. What Massie is doing here is forcing Patel to confront a system that appears unable or unwilling to fully investigate one of the most widely discussed criminal cases of the last 2 decades. It's a case involving powerful individuals, documented victims, and thousands of pages of federal files that have never been fully made public or fully pursued. Massie begins by entering articles and court records into the record, not to sensationalize, but to establish a pattern that federal agencies themselves have acknowledged. This case intersected with people in intelligence, government, banking, entertainment, and multiple countries. That framing matters because it highlights why transparency is essential. When a case involves individuals with influence, oversight isn't optional. It's the only safeguard the public has. The core of Massie's questioning is simple. Patel has repeatedly said publicly that there is no credible information that anyone besides Epstein himself harmed victims. But Massie points out that the FBI possesses statements, interviews, and documents, including FD 302 forms, where victims described additional individuals involved. He lists categories, not names, to avoid revealing personal identities. But the point is clear. Victims provided accounts, the FBI collected them, and yet no forward motion appears to have occurred. When Massie asks whether Patel has launched investigations into any of those individuals, Patel's answer is that nothing new has been brought to him that would justify additional action. That answer raises a problem. If the files already contain victim accounts naming individuals, then the lack of new information isn't the issue. The lack of follow-through is. Massie then presses one of the key contradictions. Patel acknowledged seeing most of the files in previous testimony, yet here he says he hasn't personally reviewed key documents containing victim statements. That tension reveals a gap in accountability. A director responsible for a highly sensitive case should not be relying on secondhand summaries, especially when those summaries contradict the public record of what victims have already alleged. Another major moment occurs when Massie asks whether Patel has reviewed or would review any intelligence-related files connected to the case. Patel is noticeably cautious, speaking only for the FBI and refusing to speculate on what other agencies may hold. That hesitation is telling. When a case intersects with powerful networks, clarity should be strong, not vague. One of the most revealing parts of the exchange is Massie's question about meeting victims. Patel says the FBI will meet with anyone who has new information, but stops short of committing to personally hear from victims. To many observers, that response reinforces the perception that institutional leaders are more willing to speak with influencers than with those most directly affected. And then there is the issue of document releases. Massie notes that on the day he introduced a petition demanding the release of files, documents were pushed out quickly, so quickly that victims' names were not properly redacted. That is not a small error. It shows a rush to manage public perception rather than a careful, trauma-informed approach to victims' privacy. Patel distances himself from the timing, but the problem remains. People who were harmed should not be collateral damage in bureaucratic mismanagement. The final piece of this hearing, questions about other investigations, underscores a larger theme. When federal institutions fail to deliver closure, clarity, or accountability in high-profile cases, public trust erodes. Whether the issue is Epstein, January 6th, Las Vegas, or anything else, the public expects transparency, consistency, and meaningful answers. What Massie highlights here is that those expectations are not being met. This hearing doesn't resolve the unanswered questions, but it exposes the gap between what federal agencies claim and what the public sees. Accountability requires more than reassurances. It requires action, documentation, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. Massie's questioning brings those tensions into full view. If you want deeper, fact-based political analysis that examines how power operates and why oversight matters, subscribe and turn on notifications. These conversations shape how justice is pursued and how institutions earn or lose the trust of the people they serve.